into my dungeon.
Welcome to Kuldrin's Crypt. I'm your host, Master Kuldrin. If you're new to the show, I use my 23 years of BDSM experience and 20 years of working in the psychology field to dispel myths, get rid of stereotypes, and answer your questions about BDSM. You can call in at 865-268-4005 to leave your questions or visit the crypt at kuldrinscrypt.com. On this episode of The Crypt, you and I need to have a very, very important conversation about acceptance within the BDSM community. But before we do that, let me hit the rules to love by. Rule number 1, safe, sane, consensual, and informed. Rule number 2, kinky. This comes from the Kinky app, available on all platforms. Not a sponsor, but it is KNKI and stands for knowledge, no intolerance, kindness, and integrity. And the quote from Mr. Paul Young is rule number 3, submission is not about authority, and it's not about obedience. It is all about relationships of love and respect. Okay, so acceptance within the BDSM community. All of you crypters know that my favorite part of BDSM outside of the play is the level of trust and open communication that comes from this particular lifestyle. But I have a couple of examples of things that when it comes to personal acceptance, they kind of missed the mark here. And these are very important things that unfortunately I'm guilty of doing. And if you've been around for pretty much any time at all, you may as well and not even realized it or thought about it. So I have an email from a listener that I'm going to go over, and hopefully together you and I can look at this, examine it with a scalpel and a magnifying glass and really tear it apart and determine what's the best way to handle these situations. So the Krypter writes, I've heard you say on the show that if anyone has questions to write you, and I've had one for a while that I'm hoping you can help with. Like I said earlier, we're relatively new to being out in the community and have been welcomed into 3 local private dungeons in our area. One about 20 minutes from our home, the others over an hour away in separate directions. We have a very small core group of people, and they are basically taking turns hosting events and play parties. The problem we are running into is that about 85% of the people are poly, which we are completely fine with. It's just not for us. And they all play amongst themselves, and Master and I only play with each other. We both have explained nicely on multiple occasions that we don't play with others and are strictly monogamous, and a little bit about why. However, they aren't really accepting that. It also states the same thing on both of our Fetlife profiles. I've even had individuals make comments at a vanilla baby shower hosted at one dungeon about giving it time, and they'd change my song and I'd join their poly group. So the question is, beyond driving 2 hours to a large city, which is prohibitive due to children, cost, and restrictions due to opposite days off work, what does a couple do? The only options we can come up with are distance ourselves from the local community and only play at home again, drive to a large city if and when we can schedule it, or continue to put up with the comments, reiterate our stand at every event. Please don't get me wrong. These are very nice individuals and have been happy to accept us into the fold. We just don't know about how to handle the constant inquiries without being downright rude and or being rejected by the group. Thank you for taking the time to read my email, having such a wonderful show, and being such a driving force of safety and understanding in the community. Well, thank you for that compliment and for reaching out to me. And I responded back, you stated these are good people, so it sounds as though they are being playful but also serious in their attempt to change your marriage and dynamic. If it were me, because I tend to be very direct and outgoing, I would pick a munch or gathering where most or all would be and stand together with my sub, get everyone's attention, and then say something like, good evening, everyone. First, my sub Mayfair and I would like to thank you all for being so welcoming as we have ventured out from the bedroom and into this wonderful local community. She and I never expected to make such wonderful friends and have such great experiences, and we thank you all for that. From toys to types of play, it makes us excited to continue this journey together. But speaking of, there is one thing that is making us uncomfortable. We respect everyone's dynamic and seeing all the different ways people are together and how they play. However, there seems to be a lot of pressure and comments that we should try poly, and that just is not our dynamic. Also, by us stating we are not poly and some continuing to push, we feel as though our hard limits are being pushed without either of us consenting to it. We respect that way of doing things, but we don't feel the respect in return. Like we are judged for such a vanilla marriage dynamic like monogamy. Please understand, we know that no one has done this to make us feel uncomfortable, but we do feel strongly that if people continue to disrespect our marriage by trying to convince us to convert to a poly lifestyle, we will have to take our fun back behind the comfort and security of our own closed doors. I would say this with the nicest yet most sincere and stern tone possible, as to offer respect but command authority. So I sent that to the Krypter that is having this issue, and in return, I received, "I'm sorry to hear that you've dealt with a similar issue recently, and I hope whatever you did has helped the situation. I think doing an episode on this type of thing would be an excellent idea, and I'm sure it would help quite a few people. I imagine it would work for most any situation that people are pushing their agendas on others. Situations like the poly issue, problems with someone pushing you to try a kink because they love it. That's been an issue also, unfortunately," she says. "Swinging, and I'm sure countless others that I'm not even aware are options. I love your speech and definitely heard your voice in my head while reading it, and I can't wait to hear what else you have to say on the episode if it comes to existence. If we can do anything to help you with the podcast, let my master or I know." My response? Really, when you think about it, it comes down to communication, as it almost always does. If they are joking but serious, they may not realize that what they're saying is pushy, rude, inappropriate, judgy, what have you. Also, they're like most people who think about consent on terms of physical actions like sex or the use of impact toys. Even when consent is thought about when it comes to words, most people just think about humiliation, degradation, and honorifics, when in fact it's also being pushy, being intrusive, being obtuse. Most people, myself included, are guilty of doing this, but when it was brought to my attention, well, you just can't unlearn things once they're stuck in your noodle. I'm curious about the experience of others that have dealt with this. How did you handle it? And what was your outcome? Krypters, listeners, you, please email me your story and be sure to include it, whether or not I can share it. So that is one version of acceptance that we don't think about. People often think about the sexual orientation being accepted, especially here in the South, where that is still unfortunately an issue, the Southern United States, or someone's look or their size or their tattoos, whether they're, quote, too skinny, quote, too fat. There's all kinds of things that some just don't seem to be able to accept about others. And that's really when you need to practice the rule of, if you don't have anything good to say, keep your mouth shut. But I think this is something that everyone has probably experienced. Like I said in the opening, you've probably done it completely unintentionally. But pushing people into these types of things, you and I need to be very cautious about this and make sure that we are not part of the problem. Another thing I feel I need to talk to you about is something that happened at a party. A brand new couple came into the middle of a conversation and immediately left because of what they heard. There were a few interracial couples and a few singles scattered about in a living room having a rather comical conversation about their lives and the weird things that happen in all relationships, gay, straight, interracial, and other. And the couple that entered late into the chat packed up and bailed on the party. Later, they texted the person that had sponsored them to be there, stating that they felt someone of a minority heritage was being made fun of and referenced two people that were doing it. The party host was very, very, very concerned and asked me to assist in investigating what went down. This type of behavior in her house is immediately sought out for truth and will be shut down. It is not tolerated at all. So we immediately jumped into action, sought out the truth of the situation. And the truth was far from the couple that had left's perception of it. A lot of people think perception is reality, and that is a constant argument with me. And I've said this in the early days of the show. The truth is the truth, and perception is what you think the truth is, but that does not make it real. Two interracial couples were actually leading the conversation. Everyone involved was very close friends, and the main comment made in question was actually said by a very sweet, slightly older lady that was quoting a comedian who was also part of a minority in America. And they had referenced a tattoo that was on someone, saying that it was an SS tattoo, and it was actually a pagan symbol. And they have that symbol also on their collar. So there was just all kinds of things wrong with their perception of what had taken place. So what's my point? Well, first, the couple that left did what they felt was necessary. Was it wrong or right? They felt it was an environment that didn't suit them, and they left. Then reported the possible hate speech. Is it even for us to judge their actions, really? Or is it something that we can use as a lesson for making snap judgments? Now, if you're a Krypter, meaning a listener that's been with me for a while, then you already know what I'm about to do. So let's get educated on this. Even though they thought that they were standing up for justice, if they had really been standing up, they would have done so prior to leaving, as in the moment it happened, and not waited to send a text. They could have asked about the tattoo instead of developing a biased disposition toward this person that was based on ignorance. And a side note here, can I take a tangent? Is that okay with you? Why did ignorant become such a bad thing to say about someone? No one knows everything. Therefore, everyone is ignorant about something or a lot of somethings. But people confuse being called ignorant with being called stupid. Stupid is having a lack of intelligence. Ignorance is having a lack of knowledge on a particular topic. And we're all ignorant about certain things. And sometimes that makes us appear stupid. But when I say that this couple was ignorant about the tattoo and about what was going on, I just mean that they didn't have all the facts. And because of not having all the facts, they already had this biased disposition, as I said, toward this person with a particular tattoo. So that could have led them to already believe that this person was going to be talking hate speech, when in fact, they absolutely were not. But anyway, let's get back into this. Enough of my tangent. In this case, talking to the host or the person that sponsored you to be at the party would have been the better choice. I understand what it feels like to be new and not wanting to make waves with a bunch of people that you don't know. So there really wasn't an easy choice except for the wrong choice, which would have been to just say nothing and do nothing at all, not even a text, and just left either then or later in the evening, and then had a permanent bad impression of basically everyone that attended. So to me, that would have been the bad decision, and they didn't do that. They left because they felt that the environment wasn't suitable for them, and then they reported. So it's completely understandable why they waited. I don't judge them as doing the wrong thing. I judge them as doing what they felt that they had to do, and I accept them for their choices. So as I said before in the previous story, and as I say to you on nearly every single episode, communicate. Again, I don't at all look down on the people that left or the people that were having the conversation. And I did hear part of this conversation, and I was like, what the what? oh, okay, I know who they're talking about and what they're talking about and referencing this comedian. And I'll be honest, it was a funny conversation. I thought that there was actually some enlightening moments from it because the two interracial couples were talking about some things that I don't know. I've dated interracially, but as far as really long term, like they're talking several years here, they've experienced a lot more in that than I have. And in being married, I've never been married to someone outside of my own race. So I was learning and I appreciated the brief time that I got to sit there and listen and learn. But anyway, so as I was saying, as far as I'm concerned, they all made the choices that suited them. And that is acceptance. Just because I would have done different doesn't mean that I see fault, blame, or condemnation. I'm fully aware of my life experiences and how they influence the decisions that I make. And I'm fairly certain that most, if not all of the people at the party understand their own reasonings as well, regardless of it's the people that were having the conversation or the people that left. So being able to process that and accept that. There's a lot of shows out there, again, to get back into some of the other things that I mentioned earlier with how someone looks, whether it's based on weight or just their look or their choice in clothing, not accepting people in that way. You know, it's so much broader than that, and most of us don't think about that. So if you have a particular kink that you just really, really love, something that you really enjoy doing, don't try to push somebody into it. So in wrapping up this topic, first, I just want you to be more understanding and aware. If you don't know, ask. If someone says that something isn't for them or isn't their kink, respect that. On the flip side, talk. Ask and communicate. Look, I completely get the joy, happiness, and excitement that my way of life, my kinks, and my fetishes bring me, but I also know that it is absolutely for me. Now, you probably thought that I was going to say, but I also know that it's not for everyone. But in this case, it is not at all a difference in semantics. The way I stated it is true. My way of life, my kinks, my fetishes are for me because of my experiences, my psychological foundation, and my growth and my education throughout my journey. And I'm the only person that has or will ever have the exact journey that has led me to where I currently am. Secondly, I am a person that makes inappropriate jokes and comments. That's just who I am. And not just the perverse kind or the dirty jokes, things of that nature. I don't really like the childish humor, but the sarcastic, snarky kind, that's just part of my makeup. And oh no, I'm talking about the ones that most people don't understand until they get to know me. And even then, I'm probably most often described as an asshole. I say these things joking around, but what is in my mind usually doesn't translate and come out of my mouth. I have to learn to become hyper attentive to these comments, and I try not to say them. I try to filter myself. Sure, I could have a F anyone that has a problem with it kind of attitude, but that's just too redneck, too trashy, and way too bullying. And it doesn't really do any good in my life. Ellen DeGeneres ends every show with saying, be kind to one another. And I agree with her on this. Now, you might be thinking, holy crap, Kuldrin has turned into a hippie. No, Kuldrin has not turned into a hippie. There are still things that I take my stands on. There are ways of being that is very important to me. And I will fight for those tooth and nail. However, when it comes to the acceptance of other people, I use them as a mirror. And often when I find myself not accepting something in someone else, it might be because it reminds me of me and I don't like it. Think about that one too. And that's going to wrap it up. As always, I'd like to thank our executive producers, Jeremiah, Silas, Jess, Arcane Dragon, and Violet Aurelia. Our senior producers, Matt and Emerald Wolf. Producers, Kane Sin, That Place in Oklahoma City. Thank you, Mater. JK, a very special friend of mine, Roxy Bear. Thank you so much. Our junior producers, K2SO, which was our very first one, Buffalo Dom 84, Payne Waits, Leisumi, and Haley. If you'd like to become one of our show producers, go to our website, kuldrinscrypt.com/support. Second, BDSMcontracts.org. Thank you for your beautiful 25-page soft and hardbound MS and DS contracts. For a 20% discount, go to BDSMcontracts.org. Use the coupon code Kuldrin20. That is KULDRIN20 with no spaces. And finally, as always, whippingstripes.com, my personal maker of all things leather and paracord impact toys. Thank you so much for everything that you do. For show notes, how to subscribe, information, a limits and interest survey, visit kuldrinscrypt.com. You can also find out how to get in touch with me there. All the links to the social medias, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Fetlifes, all the good fun stuff. That is kuldrinscrypt.com. And this has been Master Kuldrin for kuldrinscrypt.com. Unearth the truth.